My name is Kate Probst. I'm an independent consultant, and I've worked on evaluating the Superfund program for over 20 years. Congress enacted the Superfund law in 1980 in response to contamination at sites like Love Canal in upstate New York and Valley of the Drums in Kentucky. Neither the states nor the federal government had the authority nor the resources to clean up the contaminated sites that were dotted across the country. The 1980 Superfund law had three key elements. First, it gave the EPA the authority to identify and clean up sites across the country. Second, it created a powerful liability scheme whereby those parties with some responsibility at the site paid for cleanup. And third, it created a dedicated trust fund paid for by taxes on petroleum and chemical feedstocks to pay for the program. One thing Congress did not include in the legislation was compensation for victims of contamination. In 1986, Congress enacted major amendments to Superfund. These amendments included quintupling annual funding for EPA, creating a new broad-based corporate environmental tax to pay for this increased appropriations, and putting in place incentives for private parties to settle with EPA to speed cleanup. Now, 40 years after Superfund was enacted, it's time to look at whether the program has been successful. On the plus side, EPA has added over 1,700 sites to the National Priorities List, which is the list of sites where EPA takes action to ensure cleanup. 25% of these sites have been cleaned up and removed from the NPL, and at many sites, the costs of cleanup have been borne by the parties responsible, not by the federal government. However, cleanup at these sites has been agonizingly slow. At almost 75% of sites, the cleanups are not completed, and some of these sites have been on the National Priorities List for 10, 20, or even 30 years. In addition, at 10 to 20% of the sites, there are currently risks to human health. Finally, the majority of costs in the past 20 years have been borne by taxpayers, which is not what Congress intended. The program is seriously underfunded, delaying cleanup and enforcement at contaminated sites. And for the past 20 years, the majority of funding has come from taxpayers, which is not what Congress intended. Thinking about the future, there are a few steps that could be taken to improve the workings of the Superfund program. First of all, Congress needs to conduct effective oversight and hold EPA accountable for cleanup and enforcement. Second, EPA needs to estimate how much money is needed to fully fund the program. Third, EPA needs to implement meaningful reforms to speed cleanup and enforcement.